Welcome to Phantom Zone, the podcast where we dredge the lakes of hell in search of the worst that the cinematic world has to offer. Then we put it on trial for its various sins against humanity, and should we find a film to be guilty, it will be jettisoned into the far, far, deep, deep, deep recesses of space, a Phantom Zone, if you will. I'm your host, Adrian Torres, and joining me once again, even after the horrible, horrible little detour that we had last week, is Scott Daly. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing well. I am so much happier to talk about a movie that I actually kind of liked than last week.
I'm going to take a moment here and apologize to our tens of 10 listeners and say that I personally am sorry for running through that plot last week for Senorita Justice as fast as I possibly could. But Scott and I didn't really want to talk about it for that long. If any of you intrepid souls end up watching the movie, you understand our pain, and you probably want to send us death threats because you watched that movie, but I did try to warn you ahead of time. This week, though, we decided to go a little bit different. Unfortunately, everything's been kind of crazy for this last week, so we had to find a movie that we could watch right away, which didn't mean sitting down and watching Heartbeeps. So I do apologize to everybody, but we had to find something basically that we could watch on Netflix, at the tail end of the day before we passed out. And what I realized is that every point in a person's life, there comes a time where they have to take a look in the mirror, a real good, strong look, and ask themselves, can I make it through watching an entire WWE movie? Surprisingly, there's a chance that most people have already seen one of their films, as over the last decade or so, they've been really aggressive when it comes to putting out as many movies as they can. A few that they've made was No One Lives with Rupert Evans, that kind of flips the slasher genre, where one of the people that's being hunted and killed by some crazy people is a serial killer himself. The Rundown that has The Rock, Walking Tall that had The Rock, The Marine, which I don't really remember, but it actually was profitable for one of their films. 12 Rounds with John CENA. The Call, strangely enough, from 2 years back with Halle Berry. And then a movie that actually did pretty well a year or two ago, Oculus, about the horror film with the mirrors.
I dug that movie. I liked it a lot.
Lots of people liked it. It made a ton of money. The guy who directed it, I believe I'm getting this right, it was Mike Flanagan, who has made 3 or 4 movies in the last year. Last year, he scored a really big hit with the movie Hush, which is on Netflix if you get a chance to see it. That one's really good.
Oh, I like that too. I didn't know that was the same guy. That's cool.
Yeah, he did that one. He did Ouija 2, Origin of Evil from this last summer.
Well, I didn't see that, but that got really good reviews too.
It got really good reviews.
This guy's doing great.
And then he did, I'm going to blank on the title of it, but it's something like Before I Wake, I think is what it's called. It's the one that's got Kate Bosworth and Tom Jane.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, their son, when he goes to sleep, when he dreams, the dreams end up coming to life. But he's also, last I heard, I don't know if it's still in the works, but he was the person who was tapped to make the next Halloween movie.
Wow. What a career.
Yeah.
I wish we were watching a movie he directed.
But it was helped because of Oculus, which was produced by WWE. And WWE is able to make all these movies not just because they're wrestling side, but because they also make 500 million thousand direct-to-DVD Scooby-Doo animated films.
I had no idea that was WWE. That's hilarious.
Yeah, all those that you see aggressively out there, they're all involved in them. They're actually, and I saw a 30-second trailer for this yesterday and almost threw up in my mouth. That the Penguin surfing movie from a couple years back, Surf's Up, WWE decided that was the correct vehicle that they should give a sequel to.
Oh, good.
And cast with nothing but WWE All-Stars.
Of course.
So that's coming sometime this year.
Didn't that movie have Shia LaBeouf as the main voice in it, the first one?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
I don't know
trip.
if he's back for this one. Who knows?
I hope so.
Character actor and insane person, Shia LaBeouf. But the movie that we're talking about is called Countdown and stars Dolph Ziggler, who is one of the current wrestlers. If you don't know anything about wrestling, that's okay. That Scott was very confused, which we're going to play a game with later. But along with Dolph Ziggler, it also has Kane, who many people, even if they haven't been up to date on wrestling recently, he was still really big in the early aughts. He came out and was touted, at least in the WWE, I'm using air quotation marks here, as Undertaker's brother. But he was the really tall guy who had long hair and dressed in black and red, basically. The guy's like 7 foot tall, so the only move they really had him do was choke slam, and he does the choking part, at least in this movie. It also unfortunately stars Catherine Isabelle, who's a great actress. I always like her. She was most recently on the Hannibal TV show, for anybody who saw that. She was
great.
Margot.
If you haven't seen that, see that show.
Yeah, she was Margot Verger, and she was great in it. But in this movie, it basically feels like she was forced to do community service, and this movie was what expedited her time.
Yeah, somebody has some dirt on her.
She doesn't want to be in any scene whatsoever. She's rushing through dialogue, not even usually looking at anybody else who's in the scene. You feel bad for her. IMDb has a very short but pretty great synopsis of this little gem. When a madman kidnaps a young boy and rigs him with explosives, Ray defies his captain and takes matters into his own hands. Now he must beat the clock and save the innocent child. I think it's funny that they mention innocent child because there's no way to really know. We never hear this kid speak at any point. So who defines him as innocent child, save for that he's a kid?
All children are innocent, Adrian.
So what if this kid, when he got kidnapped, was like pummeling some small child or was stabbing some adult's tires?
Or what if he cures cancer later in life? You don't know.
No, I don't, because this movie's not about that. And if it is, then there's a chance that he dies and it magically becomes that horrible Adam Sandler film, The Do-Over. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this film because it's, I don't know if you'd call it fun in the right sense, but it has a charm in how stupid it is.
I love it. I love this movie.
There you go.
This is probably one of my favorite movies that we've done. You're absolutely right. It's stupid. It's not a good movie, but it feels like it's a movie that recognizes that it's stupid and not very good. It's a very typical cop movie, but with giant people because they're all wrestlers. So
well, but Dolph Ziggler isn't. He's not a tall person, so he's about the height of like.
Wait, he's not a wrestler?
No, he is a wrestler.
He's a giant person. He's huge.
Ooh, Dolph Ziggler?
I don't just mean like height wise. Right? He's just a big man.
No, he's one of the smaller guys. That's why his signature moves that he. Okay, so he's a muscular guy. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a giant.
He's a giant.
He's not a giant because his finishing move is the super kick, which is basically kick somebody in the throat. And if you're not aware of that, then you're probably confused at least 9 different times in the movie because instead of straight fighting a guy, he stops and kicks him in the throat.
I just thought that was cool detective techniques.
Yeah, that's something they definitely teach at the academy. The opening of this movie threw me for a loop because I wasn't sure if I was entirely seeing what was happening, but for the first 5-6 minutes of the film, there's no English being spoken and there's no subtitles.
It's a really daring choice, and it's all over super hardcore rock music.
Yes, in a shipyard. I guess it's a shipyard. I don't know, but we meet Ray, who comes with his, I guess, partner, Mr. Al Kendricks, who is bound to become a fan favorite of the show for anybody who watches. It's not like Christopher Maloney in I Am Wrath. It's not that level, but it's just the character is so stupid. And it's not even like the character's fault. It's just like the way he's written doesn't really make sense, except for that he feels really stupid. If they made him bumbling, it'd be easier to like him more. So you like him on like a different. It's hard to explain, but there's something about the guy that you're just like, I'm glad to see you again, Kendricks.
Well, it's just perfect because like the first scene he's in is him trying to be undercover and just failing so miserably.
So Dolph Ziggler plays Ray, who's the hothead cop who works narcotics and weapons, I guess. And he shows up at this Russian guy's place because he hears that he's stealing in weapons, large arms. He's selling them. He's a ground runner, so he's got to take him down. And Kendricks is acting a fool, so Ray has to shoot him in the chest, to prove that he's not a cop.
Because the Russian immediately knows that Kendricks is a cop, like right away.
Yeah, he's like, you're a cop, and he's like, dude, be cool, and then just shoots him. And he goes, there, are you happy? And the Russian's response to it is, why not shoot him in the head like a real soldier?
That's beautiful, beautiful accent.
Thank you. But it comes off as weird because this is a line that's repeated no less than 3 other times in the movie, in which people are shot, and the response somebody directly has is, why don't you shoot them in the head like a real soldier?
And it's different people each time, so it's not like it's like one person repeating the same thing.
Is this some universal truth that soldiers shoot people in the head?
I just assumed it was a wrestling thing. Every time I didn't understand something in this movie, my response was it's probably a wrestling thing. I don't get.
But he's a cop, so that's why I don't understand why he's like, why did you shoot him in the head? I don't know lots of cops that are just like, oh no, it's a perpetrator. My first instinct is shoot him in the head. All right. So while he does bust this guy, he basically uses excessive force in doing so.
Yeah, he shot his partner in the chest.
Yeah, but he had a bulletproof vest.
But
he
those
didn't
don't always work, especially at that close range.
He knew the risks. He's a lethal weapon.
I see what you did.
So he gets called into his superior's office, which is his captain is Kane, but in corporate Kane mode. Now, if you know nothing about wrestling, I won't go down the whole story, but there was a point basically where they decided that the Kane character wasn't working. And so they wanted him to be basically the general manager. And so they had him take off his costume and look just like a very tall, scary man and had him be part of the corporate world.
Wrestling sounds ridiculous.
Oh, it is. Go online sometime and read like the back histories that they have like of these characters and everything, and it's ridiculous. So Kane's here as the captain, and he's called him in because he's got Catherine Isabel, who works for the OPA,
which I don't think is an independent police internal investigation group.
Basically, it's an internal investigation group that answers directly to the whims of the community, is what she said. She doesn't work directly for them. She works. It doesn't make any sense. But we get the first of basically the type of banter and dialogue that this movie tries to excel in which Catherine Isabel is trying to explain what her job is, stops talking, and Dolph Ziggler looks at her and goes, "Hey, you're cute." And she goes, "Yeah, you're cute too," in that kind of DUI mugshot sort of way. Right? Am I right?
That chemistry. When are these two gonna bang? Was my immediate thought.
They're not, Scott.
It's the most disappointing part of this movie. If these guys had, like, in the middle of this really intensive, we only have 5 hours to solve this thing, just stopped to bang for like 10 minutes, it would have been the perfect movie.
Well, would you want them to stop and like get a hotel room and bang, or would you want it to be like,
just like in a car, in the streets, lumberyard?
See, it's funny anytime anybody mentions that they like want that, because I want to show them the scene from the movie The Chase from years ago with Charlie Sheen, where I can't remember.
I know, yeah.
where they're on the highway, they can't stop driving, and he's hitting it off with the chick in the car, and she basically wants to do it with him, and he's like, no, I gotta keep driving. So she's like, here, I'm just gonna straddle you while you're driving, and we're just gonna have sex while we're driving 80 miles an hour down the freeway.
See, if that movie can fit it in, then damn it, Countdown can't too. And I was disappointed.
But that goes against the wholesome nature of, WWE's brand.
What was this movie rated? Is it not R? I just assumed
I'm pretty sure it's R, because there's at least 3 people who get shot in the head.
Yeah.
And there's at least like 4 different fucks that are thrown out. So he's I guess, because they want to send a good message somehow in this movie, WWE decides, we got to have our lead detective, Ray. He has to be suspended. But still, because he's not a terrible guy, it's going to be with pay. And he's getting ready to leave, and he casually looks through his mail. Isn't like escorted out of the building. He's allowed to go back to his office.
Yeah. And he puts something on a flash drive that they never explain in the movie.
No. Never at any point. But he's looking through his mail, and there happens to be a really large envelope that's got like about 20 stamps on it. And he's like, I've been getting a whole bunch of these. And so he takes it down to the bomb squad lab and gives it to his friend and hands it to her. And she goes, oh, another one, huh? The last one that I got had absolutely no fingerprints and had the same thing. A demand of $2 million, $2,112.35. Very important number for very stupid reason.
And doesn't he say that this is like coming up on the anniversary of how long he's been getting these? So it's like been a year.
Yeah, he's been getting them for about a year, which is also, is it about a year since the event took place?
It's actually 3, it says later.
Oh, 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Because directly from here, he decides that he's going to, or he's found by what you think is his wife, but actually turns out is his ex-wife, inside their son's room, because their son was killed 3 years earlier. That's all you know, is that their son died, and she tells him, hey, you can't keep coming here. And even though she's totally fine with him basically spending the night in their dead son's room.
You can't keep coming here, but I'm going to leave.
You can't keep coming here and drinking 3 of my beers, 1 for each anniversary that our son's been dead. He gets woken up the next morning by a text at 3:00 in the afternoon.
It says 3 p.m. I double checked just to make sure I was right on that. It is 3 p.m. in the afternoon when he gets the text.
He gets a text that takes up the entire phone. It doesn't allow him to do anything else, just one giant big block text.
I mean, that's all people use phones for now anyway, right?
I guess. I mean, he can't even do anything else. I don't even know how he responds, because there's not even a place for him to put in his keystrokes. But it's from the captain, who decided that, calling wasn't really a good idea, and says, hey, you need to get in here. He shows up. They have a password locked website that they came across, because the bomb squad lady took a look and saw that on the piece of paper there was basically like coordinates online to find this website, and on the website they need a password to get in it, and above it basically has what looks like a countdown clock that says 9 hours and 30 minutes, but doesn't have anything else on there. And so Ziegler gives them a couple different, password ideas until they find one that sticks. The second they find one, the countdown clock begins, and the camera goes to a kid that is strapped with the explosives and a voice saying, hey, this is the amount of money that, that you need to give me, and you need to bring it to this place at this time. Otherwise, the kid's going to die. If you try to find the kid and you try to undo the bomb, it's going to end up blowing him up. If I find out that you come with the police, I'm going to blow the kid up. And the reason this is really weird is because it leads to the thought that if he doesn't have them put in the password, then the countdown shouldn't start
None
and
of this
the kid would be fine.
Yeah.
So they drag the police officer who's suspended to basically fuck everything up. Turns out that the place that he's supposed to go to deliver the money is a WWE wrestling event, because they want to make sure to get their talent out on there.
Of course. I mean, why not?
You see them from afar, and they're shot with completely different cameras than like the actual movie itself is.
Yeah, it looks like they just went to an actual like WWE event and got some basic B-roll and
here you go,
plugged it into the movie.
So Ziegler's sitting there, waiting for instructions. He ends up getting a message basically that says, "Hey, I told you, no police officers. That guy in the black hat behind you." And Ziegler ends up going, "Hey, Kendricks, you've been made. You got to get out of here." And Kendricks just goes, shit, I got to get out of here. It's like, yes, exactly. That's what the man just told you, Kendricks. How do you not understand that? Because
he's Kendricks. He's the worst.
Your basic character motivation is the guy says, get out of here. And your only response is, I should probably get out of here. Oh, I understand. He ends up dropping the money where he's supposed to. Bag gets picked up, conveniently has a tracking device in it. And so he tries to tail the guy. The guy goes into the bathroom and, is smart enough to put it in a new bag, walks out. They don't have the tracker there. So random black police officer decides that he's just going to start running after the guy and shouting, "Stop, please, stop." Which, of course, means he's going to get shot and killed.
He's dead. Yeah.
Ziegler grabs his gun and just keeps on running. Doesn't check to see if the guy's dead or anything like that. Just grabs the gun and goes, we have an officer down, and just runs off. Doesn't say anything. Chases after him, which, of course, because it's WWE and they're at a WWE event, ends up being the backstage area. And he runs across Rusev. Rusev is one of the big wrestlers right now. He was the U.S. Title holder for a while, but he's just a big, ridiculous Machka man.
He's a giant man.
Yes, he's a wrestler to Scott because he's a giant man.
That's how I tell. They're giant men, they're wrestlers.
Rusev decides that he's going to hip check Ziggler and grab his gun, which he also magically knows to correctly cock and hold on him, and gets in like a police stance for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Dude, those wrestlers know their shit, man.
And he responds with saying, hey, where's, because Ziggler's trying to say, no, I'm a police officer. And he goes, okay, where's your badge? And he goes, it's right here. And just super kicks him in the face and keeps running off.
So that was fun.
Just for no reason. But he finally gets the guy up at the catwalk, and the guy, just like in every movie, has the phone that's going to remote detonate. And he's trying to explain to Ziggler that they're the same, how they're connected. And Ziggler, basically remembering the words of the Russian at the beginning of the movie, decides to shoot him in the head, like a soldier would.
Of course.
So your main guy who has put the bombs on the kid, left the kid in a random place so he could get this money, has been shot and killed. And we're at like minute 25.
This is the main bad guy in the film. He's dead now.
As far as we know. There could be other guys. The movie doesn't really care whatsoever. Ziggler, even though he is still suspended, because when he leaves the event, he makes sure to ask, are you reinstating me? Kane says, no. Are you arresting me? No. So he just goes upon his merry way and decides, you know what? I'm not going to let this kid die. I'm going to do everything I can to try to save him. And Catherine Isabel goes, that's great. I need to follow you and I need to document everything you do for the OPA. Which again doesn't make sense because he's not on duty.
Yeah, well, there's that hilariously short chase scene where she's trying to tail him and he just forces her to run into the back of his truck.
And she comes running up to the side of his vehicle and throws open the door and mentions, you know what? I think we got off onto the wrong foot. See, the thing is, I actually believe in the justice system. And I know that you did too, because I read your file.
And it's funny, but also the way she delivers this line is like every other line she delivers, which is, I hate everything I'm saying. So it's every line she has a tinge of sarcasm to it.
Yeah, she's half out of breath, staring off to the side, and just guffawing basically everything she's saying. It feels really sad. But they decide that the guy that they killed had a whole bunch of tattoos on him. So the detective's idea is, let's go to a tattoo parlor and try to see what information we can get.
And by see what information we can get, you mean run in and punch everybody in the face.
Yes, run in, punch everybody in the face, super kick a couple people, hit them with pool cues because there just happens to be a pool table in the middle of the tattoo parlor, and then demand that somebody tell you what these tattoos mean. Even though it turns out that Ziegler happens to know one of the people that works in the tattoo parlor because he refers to him by name. He could have easily called up the guy and said, hey, got pictures of these tattoos. Is there any chance that I mention them to him? And you can tell me if you know anything about him.
Like, there's no way Ray doesn't have a tattoo. So, like, is this
Probably a tramp stamp. That's my guess.
This behavior is hilarious. And it's repeated multiple times throughout this movie where he will just enter a place. No one is combative with him, but he just goes apeshit and starts beating up everybody. And it's awesome.
It's ridiculous. But, I mean, technically he does get his answer because the guy tells him that, hey, you know, that snake tattoo that he has around his neck, that means that he either is or was a drug addict. And the other tattoos he has means that he probably raped someone.
It's a mermaid. The mermaid means he's either a rapist or a child molester.
Because there's no difference between the two of them.
So here's... And I know I've asked you this question when we were talking about this movie before. I still don't understand. So these are Russian gang tats.
Yes.
Did he choose to tattoo these things on his own body? Or was he forced to tattoo these things?
I think he was forced. But I mean, the weird thing about that when it comes to like the tattoos with the Russians is any time that you usually see it is somebody, you know, who's involved with the mob. And usually the tattoos that they have correspond to something about their ranking. And it's not
rank mermaid.
I guess it's probably the lowest rank. It's just like, oh, I know we're the mob, but we look down on people who are both drug addicts and or child molesters or rapists. So we gotta let everybody know. I guess maybe that's like their sexual offender type thing. Instead of like going door to door and knocking, you go door to door and you show everybody your tattoo, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna stay away from you." He's got a mermaid and a snake around his neck. So
this scene is amazing, but it's pointless. They don't learn. I mean, he already knew the guy was Russian. Because he heard his voice on the tape recorder, and one of the other tattoos is in Russian lettering. Like, so he already, and he doesn't learn any other detailed information. They don't recognize the guy. They don't even really send him somewhere to look. Like, he doesn't have another clue from this tattoo parlor. So he really just walked into a building, kicked a bunch of people, and then left.
In a way, I would say there is, because he decides that he's going to send Catherine Isabel to look into an old case that he worked where he broke up a big sting of drugs and weapons with some Russians, basically. And he thinks that somebody might have ties to that. At the same time, he wants her to go and canvass part of the city and see if anybody can, if anybody's seen the kid that's strapped with the bombs. And he's going to go hunt down another avenue. His hunting down of the other avenue is going to the house of the Russian guy from the beginning of the movie who's magically somehow gotten out of prison in the last 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, it has to have been no more than 2 days. Like, he arrested the guy, he got reprimanded, went home, fell asleep, and this is all the next day.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is up with the Seattle justice system that
I don't know.
A man who caught red-handed with illegal weaponry is out of prison the next day?
It's who knows.
I mean, if I were Ray, I'd be upset too. I'd be out wanting to kick everyone.
He's not just upset. He decides to show up to the Russian guy's house and decide to garrote him until he gets the information. Like, he doesn't come up and like put a chokehold or anything, but he's got the wire, you know, he's got the wire and he's choking him out, and it's leaving like the marks on his neck, which are horribly done because their makeup department wasn't very good. And they're like, we're going to just put a little bit of red paint on this wire. So anytime you move it, it'll leave a red mark on his throat.
Works for me.
Either that or he actually was choking the person, and because he can't act very well, was cutting the guy's neck up.
That could be.
But he basically tries to find out if this guy was connected with him, what could be a part of. He doesn't really find anything out, but he does get a name of a higher up guy who ends up working at the consulate. On Catherine Isabel's side of things, we again basically go into a foreign movie in which there's no subtitles, because while she does ask several people on the street, it takes her asking like somebody a question 4 or 5 different times for this little girl to be like, oh, I speak English. And that's literally how she answers her. There's a conversation going in front of her that's been going on for like 2-3 minutes, and the girl just goes, I speak English. Like, thanks, kid. Thanks for
the help. Appreciate it.
And so Catherine Isabel goes with these two ladies to a building where the father of the child that they're looking for is. And when watching this...
But she doesn't go just once, does she?
No, that's what I was going to say, is when we were watching this on Netflix, both Scott and I encountered a weird glitch.
So she walks up the stairs and is talking to the little girl about, where are you taking me? And then it cuts back to her back at the bottom of the stairs walking in the front door, only the sound's off, and repeats that entire scene over again, and then eventually catches up to itself right in front of the door of the guy's apartment they're going to. So I don't know. I mean, obviously it's repeatable. I did it again right before we started recording. So it's just something wrong with the Netflix file that they're streaming. I don't know if this was something that was repeated in every version of this movie.
I hope so.
I hope so, because it's hilarious.
I thought I was going crazy. And when I asked you about it, I was glad that you were like, no, I had to rewind for a second. I'm like, okay, I did too, because I had no idea what was going on. I thought that maybe the little girl somehow slipped Catherine Isabel a drug, and we were seeing like her weird hallucination she was going on, and the movie was going some down weird direction. But no, instead, it's just an issue with the file, and they go upstairs and they meet a very timid man who's the father of the kid who has the bomb strapped to him. And the dad is oddly nonchalant because he recently had his son sent back to Russia, and only the day before found out that his son was not in Russia because it cost a lot for a long distance call.
Yeah, he doesn't seem at all concerned about anything that's happening. This American woman comes to you, is a police officer, and says, your son is missing and we're looking for your son. He knows his son is missing as well, and he's just kind of like, I don't know what to do. I can't really help you.
And while this is going on, the landlord to the building busts in and gets mad at Catherine Isabel and is like, you can't be here. You got to have a warrant. You guys are harassing all the tenants. And it's like, no, they asked the guy and the guy just let him in. It was like, oh, sure, come on in. That's not harassment.
Warrants work.
And we cut from this to Ziegler going to the Russian consulate, which, just like Scott mentioned, anytime he goes anywhere, he doesn't decide to like call ahead and be like, hey, is there any chance that I can sit down? I'm with the police. I need to ask you a couple questions. It's not going to take very long. Instead, he just walks into the building, walks through the security checkpoint, alarm goes off, and he starts beating the crap out of everybody until he can get to the consulate's office upstairs. And when he does so, he tries, grilling him simply, just by asking him a couple questions. And the guy's response is, I have diplomatic immunity, to which Ray grabs a pen, stabs it in the guy's leg, and then says, funny, you don't look immune.
This whole scene is so wonderful.
It's terrible. It's so terrible because he takes the guy hostage then, like 2 seconds later, and has like the weirdest conversation with the two guys. Like, he's just holding him and he's like, hey, you guys, I'm just trying to get out of here. Don't do anything. I got your boss here. Just let me go. That's it. You don't have to worry about it. And then he turns while another bodyguard comes around the corner, and the bodyguard proceeds to accidentally shoot the Russian consulate guy in the chest, which causes Ziegler to lay the guy down and say, hey, listen, I'm just trying to get out of here. Your boss right here, he's probably going to bleed out in about 10 minutes. Don't try to be a hero. Just think about your job. Think about him. Take care of him. Not me. Just let me go. Just call somebody for him.
I think we need to take a step back and realize that when the United States consulate in Benghazi was attacked, it was a huge international incident involving many high-ranking people and almost started a war. And this one man just walked into the Russian consulate in Seattle, killed the consul, and just walked away.
Just walked away and met up with what's her face?
It's amazing.
He meets up with Catherine Isabel, and they're able to see the apartment that belonged to the guy who they killed earlier, who strapped the bomb to the kid. They then look under the basement of the building just to make sure that the kid's not there, just to do their job, basically. They then walk outside, and Ziegler goes, oh no, somebody stole my truck. It was worth $40,000. The truck's never mentioned again.
It's just gone.
It's just stolen, and it's never a plot point that they bring up again. And Scott, you mentioned this when we were talking before, that you think that it was just so that they could get the two of them in one vehicle again.
I really think that's the only reason.
There's no point for it whatsoever, but it does get them together, and they end up going to a house belonging to a bomb guy that the consulate gave him the name of. The bomb guy's house is amazing to me. It's just a guy who makes bombs. His door's not locked, but when you walk into his house right away, his wife is very angrily, silently chopping lettuce, and points to the other room, to which you see three girls who you don't know if they are prostitutes or his daughter.
Or both.
Or both. But they're just there, just hanging out. And then at a table in the front living room area is just a guy casually making a bomb at his table.
He's literally continuing to make a bomb while two people who identified themselves as police officers are now walking into his house. This is the weirdest scene ever, and I love it so much.
Well, it's also really weird at the same time, because he's like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, at the Russian consulate, gave us your name, and he's like, yes, they are Russian. I'm not. I'm Ukrainian from Kiev, and makes a Putin joke.
Yeah. But then they show him a picture of the bomb that's attached to the kid, and he's like, "Yep, yeah, I made that.
I made it. That's mine."
You're being super open with information to these police officers, and the entire time he's having this conversation, he's continuing to work on the bomb that he is making.
And he even stops and takes a second and mentions that he's proud of the guy who put the bomb on the child because he rigged it correctly. Because if he hadn't rigged it correctly, he would have blown up the kid and himself.
So I think they get the information on where the guy worked, right? That's what they get from the bomb maker.
That he worked at a lumberyard.
So they just leave the house.
Well, they try to leave the house because the second that they get outside, who should come walking up to the car but our good friend Kendricks. And Kendricks says that the captain wants Ray back at the police station, doesn't say why or anything, and just goes and maces Ray and Catherine Isabel in the face. Just maces them both. They take him back.
Is not macing like the most Kendricks thing to do ever? Like,
well, especially because it's not just like a little bit. Like, he just holds it for like 4 or 5 seconds and just keeps on spraying them back and forth. It's mace. It just takes one shot in each person's face, and it's done the job. It's not like if you keep on spraying, it's going to make the effects last longer.
Classic Kendricks.
So they get back to the police station where Kendricks is grilling Ray because of the fact that the bomber kind of embroiled him, and he made sure that his plan was, for the most part, foolproof. And he made sure that it was set up to look like Ray was the one who strapped the bomb to this kid, because we end up finding more about what happened with Ray's son.
Holy shit. This is where the movie, this is where I realized I was having a lot of fun. Because the story of what happens, and you have to correct me if I'm getting this wrong. I'm going to try here. They were at a homicide detective's picnic in the middle of the day. The kid was playing football in the street, and he was run over by another police officer who was also drunk driving and had previous DUIs, I think they said.
It's something like that. It was a little confusing how he said it because it's Kendricks, but that was the gist that I got.
So Ray sues the city for $2 million, and they imply that he lost the suit. They don't actually come out and say it, but it's heavily implied that he lost the lawsuit. I don't understand how you could possibly lose that lawsuit when a drunk detective runs over your child. But that's what the $2 million and the demand comes from. That's the frame job, because they're saying he's seeking revenge on the police force because he lost his lawsuit. That's ridiculous. So did I get that right? I think I got that right.
Yeah, you got that right. but not only that, but while this is going on, he's in an interrogation room. Instead of usually like you see in any of the movies or anything, on the other side of the interrogation glass is usually, where superiors and everything are watching to make sure everything's okay. Nope. Kane's still in his office, just watching it on a little laptop.
Giant wrestler doesn't leave his office.
Exactly. Ray tries to reason with Kendricks and say, can't you see what's going on? Can't you see that he's trying to frame me? Kendricks says no. And Ray decides, okay, I'm going to break out of here, and decides to beat up Kendricks and then fight his way out of the police station.
This is this is the most ridiculous police station ever. Like I said, it looks like an MC Escher painting because he's like jumping off of stairwells and landing neatly on other stairwells.
Yes.
And it's nonsense. But also
there's glass cleaners inside the building.
Yeah. Inside the building, there's glass cleaners.
Which is great because he's jumping all over the place, and Kane catches up with him He breaks away for a minute, and then Kane catches up with him again. But the second time he catches up with him, he has a shotgun that shoots beanbag bullets. And as a staple of Phantom Zone, this enters our pantheon of horrible things happening to men's dicks, in which they make sure that Ray gets shot in the shoulder, in the chest, and then gets shot in the dick by the beanbags. Just because.
Of course. And the weird thing that the movie does at this point is, like, Ray gets cornered and, like, appears to surrender, like, 4 times during this sequence. And then at the last minute, like, does a crazy move and breaks out, and then the chase resumes. But that happens so many times in this sequence. It's ridiculous.
Well, and it's like partial grapples he does, because
now you're talking wrestling again.
Well, no. I mean, but that's the thing, is like the fighting in the movie is for the most part barely concealed wrestling moves, because you can tell that they didn't have time to train him to be like an actual fighter. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to do this where it's basically a reversal that you would have in wrestling, or we're going to have this, and you can throw a basic punch and a kick, but we don't want you to throw more than 1 to 2 punches or kicks in a row, because then people are going to know how fake it looks. So they have him do like weird kind of grapples or reversals, just do it. And then he ends up getting away because he jumps off of one of the balconies onto the glass cleaner guy so that he can rappel downstairs and escape with Catherine Isabel. And they go to the lumberyard, thinking that the guy, maybe he stashed the kid there. Time's winding down. They're looking. They can't find the kid. Catherine Isabel decides that she's going to suggest, you know what? I'm going to call for backup. Because A, you just drove like 40 minutes away. By the time the cops get there, the kid will be dead, and then you'll be arrested again because there's a police-wide manhunt because you just beat up a whole bunch of people and escaped from the police station.
Not to mention, he's probably still wanted for shooting members of the Russian consulate.
That too. So they decide, you know what, we should search somewhere else. Catherine Isabel gets an email from a friend of hers who just happened to basically be able to get video footage of the bomber who was working at the police station for several months all along, and that's how he smuggled in the child with the bombs. So they need to get back to the police station that they just got away from, because that's where the kid is, even though none of like tech support is running to try to triangulate anything, even though what they were able to triangulate and part of the setup was tracing back the IP address to Ray's computer. Why they didn't think, okay, if it's coming from Ray's computer, we should probably search this building just to be safe. But
now at this point, if you're Ray, don't you call your captain and say, hey, look, I know you're after me, but we found out that the kid is inside the police station. You should probably find him.
No, they don't have time for that because the Russian guy from the very beginning of the movie that Ray garroted in like the 30-minute mark has had a guy who worked at the lumberyard who called him and said, hey, that guy that you're looking for is here. So they end up shooting his car, pulling him into their car. A big fight ensues in which Ray and Catherine Isabel have overtaken one SUV, and the Russian guy is another SUV with his driver. And as they get close and they're firing guns at each other, the guy realizes, oh, hey, that's right. I make sure every time in every SUV I'm driving that I have a grenade in my glove compartment.
Are
but unfortunately for him,
that you don't have a glove compartment grenade?
Well, I do, but normally I plan ahead.
You gotta get one
because what don't you want to happen if you have a grenade in your glove compartment?
Well, you don't want to drop it in between the seats, and the crazy thing is, it looked like the pin was still in it when he dropped it, and then his fishing around to pick it up, he actually dislodged the pin from the grenade.
See, I thought perfect. to me, it looks like he had already pulled the pin out because he rears his arm back like he's going to throw it, but his driver gets shot and hits him, and that's what causes it to fumble from his hand. And I guess like the timer on the detonator is set for like 10 seconds or so because they're still driving and he's still fishing down there, and then it explodes.
Just out of nowhere. This is great. I love it. Look, the main problem here is they killed their main villain at the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. So this guy comes back at the end and is like the final like confrontation, but he's just kind of there for revenge on Ray. Or at least we're not told he has anything specific to do with the overall revenge plot on our main character. Like, he has nothing to do with the kidnapping of the child.
Yes.
He is just there because he's mad at the guy.
From everything that happened at the beginning of the movie, and then strangling him at his house. So that's basically his main thing, because the main bad guy who was killed, it turns out, does tie back to this sting operation that Ray did a long time ago, and that one of the guys who got killed in the sting was the brother of this main guy. And it dealt with a matter of $112.35.
Yeah, I think he was deported to Russia, where he was wanted for murder.
And he got killed.
And he got killed there, and that's how much money he had on him when he was deported.
And the $2 million that he was requesting matched up with the amounts that Ziegler had sued the city for, therefore making it seem like he was trying to get that money. Because when you sue a city for $2 million because of the fact that they ran over your kid, what you care about more than anything else is that money.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, I know my kid died, but you know what? I think if I had that $2 million, I could forget about the fact that somebody killed my child.
But we skipped over my favorite quote from the film.
Oh, dear. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's when Ray is in the car with the Russian guy, and he's having his big long monologue about time and how timing's everything and he'll never be late again. And he just goes, "It's like the man said, timing is everything." And the Russian's response is, "What, man?" And then he goes, "Doesn't matter." And that's the end. So it's so wonderful. It's a culmination of how this thing's trying to have themes and just can't quite get there. It's so great.
Yeah, little things like that are great. Like when the grenade does go off to blow up the Russian guy's SUV, they then cut back to Catherine Isabel, who goes, "Well, that was dramatic."
And that's the exact way she read the line too. It's like there's no acting there.
So they get back to the police station. They manage to find the kid, and they run him to the bomb squad crime lab. But while they're doing so, they just start yelling to everyone, "Get out of the way! Move! Everyone, get out of the way!" Just like every corridor they're going down. And then they get into an elevator that's really slow, and it's absolute silence in the elevator. And then the second the elevator opens, they start running again, going, "Everybody get out of the way! Evacuate the building."
That part goes on for so long. It's like a minute and a half of them running through corridors, yelling at people. And I'm
especially because they just shoot some liquid nitrogen onto the lock, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And then, he saved the day. He saved this kid who's supposed to be in Russia because his dad wanted him to go back there for reasons we don't know.
Doesn't explain.
Ziegler gets outside. His captain shakes his hand because he's proud of him. Kendricks shows up because he's an asshole and gets punched in the face. And then Ray walks off and it freeze frames.
And he doesn't even make out with the girl. What are we doing, movie? You have every other cop movie trope in here, and then you miss the hooking up with the girl at the end part?
Yes. Well, okay. We had a discussion earlier, and so we've reached the how do we fix it moment of the show. And Scott and I were talking earlier, and we actually think that we have a reasonable, like 1 to 2 reasonable ways that you could make this movie more salvageable.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be brilliant. All right, so here we go.
Okay.
You start the movie out where our main character, Ray, and the main bad guy, I forget his name, Pavel something. They've been like feuding back and forth for a long time. And he's trying to kill Ray, but he accidentally kills Ray's son. So now their feud is even elevated because now Pavel has killed Ray's son. So there's a moment when they're fighting back and forth, and it's revealed that Pavel has put a bomb on a kid and hidden the kid somewhere in the city. But then Ray, like in the fight, like he doesn't kill him, he just like throws him into a coma or something. So now he's in a coma, but they don't know where the bomb was. So then Adrian, he has to take his face off and then exchange faces with the guy.
I hate you, Scott. No, just stop. Just stop. Just stop. You're being an asshole now because you didn't say that before. So. God damn it.
Isn't the plot of this movie so close to Face Off? Like it's just
at points, but there's no face waterfalls. So that's a distinct difference.
My goal is
the brother doesn't exist because the brother's been deported and already killed. The brother's not in some maximum security prison.
I was really hoping you would catch on to what I was doing before I answered the Face Off part.
No, because it was partly what you were saying before, earlier today when we talked.
I was going to surprise you.
So I had a legitimate idea that's not making the movie Face Off, but it does go a little bit darker. But it thematically, in a way, they're starting to kind of go there. Was instead of having it be some other police officer who ended up killing Ray's kid. It's not Ray's kid who's killed at all, but Ray is the drunk driver driving to the picnic, ends up killing the Russian bad guy's kid, and the Russian is the one who sues the city, but because Ray's a police officer, and usually the police officers protect their own, they cover up the fact that he was the one who got in the drunk driving accident, and they just have it be, write it off as a hit and run, and they protect him. And because the Russian guy doesn't have any proof when he tries to sue the city, he's not able to win. So he's mad, and he's got this revenge that he wants to get. So he ends up kidnapping Ray's kid and attaching the bomb to him. And that's why he's got the countdown that he has to go against.
Yeah, I think, all joking aside on my side, I think that the problem that the film has is that Ray's defining character attribute is the death of his son, and it's something that we never see and never really specifically impacts the plot itself.
Yes. It doesn't impact his ability to super kick everyone in the face.
Yes, yeah. So I think you're right. I think doing that brings the attention and makes it much more of a personal thing for Ray for reasons we understand. I think taking out, I think the beginning scene with that Russian guy should tie into the overall plot somehow.
Yes.
It doesn't have to necessarily be, I mean, you can leave it almost the same, but you can just make that guy be the person who was behind it all in the first place. And that would still work. I just think this is a really close movie to Face Off, and I'm sorry Face Off is the perfect movie.
Well, I think that brings us to for the perfect time for, first of all, do you have a ray of sunshine, like a really fast, short ray of sunshine that you have?
I just this, all of it. This movie has problems. It's not a good movie, but It was so enjoyable to watch for me. I was just loving every moment of it. So.
I didn't know if there was a singular moment. For me, my ray of sunshine is at the very beginning of the movie. It's I think maybe the third or fourth actual English sentence that's said in the film, because I'm not joking when I say that there's about a fourth of the dialogue in the movie is people speaking Russian to each other or on phones with no subtitles.
Yeah, it's almost so bad that when I started the movie, I was convinced I accidentally turned on like a different dubbing.
Yeah. But the Russian guy at the beginning, when Kendricks and Ray come to him, he says, I build the best tugboats in the world. Do you have a drawing? I cannot build if I do not have a drawing.
It's forgot like, about that.
First of all, why is it tugboats specifically that you're trying to peddle? I mean, I understand that you've got, the drug running and the gun running that you're doing, but why is it tugboats that's your front company? That seems like a really weird and oddly specific.
It's a super specific front
to have, and then why is it just a drawing? Like, is it like if a 5-year-old drew a tugboat, would you be like, well, it's legitimate? You've got a drawing. I got to find a way to build this fucker.
The answer to that is yes.
Okay, but we are going to do something a little bit different this time, just for this movie, basically. If we ever do any other WWE films, then we'll twist it a little bit. But we're going to play a game that's called Russian, Wrestler, or Both. So the key here is I'm going to list different characters to Scott, and he's going to have to guess if they are a Russian, a wrestler, or both.
I'm excited.
Okay, we're going to start things off.
I'm going to get it.
Start off with Ray, Dolph Ziggler himself.
I'm going to say he's definitely a wrestler.
Yes.
Yes.
You got that one right.
Yes.
Second of all, we're going with Kendricks.
Oh, boy. Well, he wasn't giant, so I don't know.
He is none of them.
Well, you didn't give me a third option.
We
need a none option.
I wanted to involve Kendricks. That was the only reason why.
Okay, yes, so good.
And I was convinced for part of it. I was like, is Kendricks a wrestler? And I just don't know who he is. And no, he's not. He's an actor. The biggest thing that he was in that I was able to find is in the movie Elysium, Charlotte Copley's guy, his enforcer character, has two guys who are always with him at all times. Kendricks plays one of those guys.
Huh. He's terrible in that movie too. So maybe he just plays guys that are bad at their jobs.
Okay, the first bad guy. I think his name is Nikolai. Our first Russian guy who's through in the entire movie.
Well, he's not giant, so I'm going to say Russian.
Yes, he's Russian.
Yes,
there you go.
He's actually Russian.
That's correct.
Okay.
He's actually Russian. Has a very Russian name, but has no picture on IMDb.
Okay.
The police captain.
I mean, he's giant, so he's definitely a wrestler.
Yes,
I don't know if he's Russian.
Since he's Kane. I don't remember his name's very boring. Like his actual real person name.
It looks like it's Glenn Jacobs.
Exactly.
That's the most plain name I've ever seen.
That's why he goes by Kane. Okay, the bomb maker.
Well, he's not Russian. He's Ukrainian.
No.
But maybe
exactly. There we go.
And he's not giant, so I'm guessing he's not a wrestler.
He's Ukrainian by way of Kiev, because he makes sure to say that. Okay, Rusev.
I'm going to say both.
Yes, technically, because the character that he's playing is kind of Russian-ish. I think he's Bulgarian, actually. But it's like weird because like the accent that they give him is what sounds Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And the fake wife that he has a Russian thing. But at times they call him the Bulgarian brute.
Make up your mind, wrestling. Exactly.
So I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that he's both. It's a sticking point, and that's why that's why I want to say that he does have like a Russian-ish accent. His wife's character is Russian, even though he sometimes sounds like he's from, or they say that he's from Bulgaria, but it's wrestling, so you can't really make sure. And the last one is a tricky one, and it's a sticking point that Scott and I have. And I will have Scott tweet this picture out so that people can zoom in on it. But random SWAT guy that Scott is obsessed with.
Well, he's clearly a wrestler because that is John Cena. And it's the only wrestler I know. It is absolutely John Cena.
It is not John Cena.
It is,
and that's the entire reason why I want Scott to tweet out this picture. Because this picture if you're zoomed out, if you know who John Cena is, even if you have like a passing glance, you can understand that the jawline looks like John Cena. But this guy is about, I'm going to say, 15 to 20 years older than John Cena. This guy looks like if you had a lab experiment that was to cross the DNA of John Cena and Jean-Claude Van Damme, this is who that guy is.
Look, the camera cuts to this random bomb squad guy walking into the building at the very end of the movie. It cuts and holds on him as he walks in. There's no other reason to do that unless it's actually trying to fit in a surprise cameo. It's John Cena. It's John Cena. I am right. There's no way.
No, this guy is way...
I win the game.
I even showed it to one of my coworkers who is a huge wrestling fan, and he laughed because he says, no, look at the age marks on his face and look at the wrinkles. That is definitely not John Cena.
Maybe you're just seeing John Cena with a bunch of makeup on and he has more wrinkles than you think he does.
This is not John Cena. Trust me. That's why we're going to put this picture up. It is not John Cena.
I want a poll, and I'm going to win the poll.
Okay. Moving on to more important things. It's time for our vote. So I'm going to let you go first, Scott. How do you vote?
I really liked this movie. This is exactly the type of enjoyment I get out of bad movies. Is that they are bad, they don't work. I would never call them high art, but they certainly were fun to watch. This movie was 90 minutes long, and I enjoyed just about every minute of it. So, not guilty. I think people could have fun watching this movie.
You know what? I'm surprised to be saying this, but I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say not guilty. Again, anytime we end up in this weird point that we do get these films, I want to try to take a step back and say, hey, when we're setting out for these movies, we're trying to choose movies that we've never seen, films sight unseen. We won't even go. I don't know if Scott has in the past. I don't think so. But we don't even watch the trailers.
No, never.
For these movies. We set out, we find out what the movie is, usually do a little background on where does it get its low ranking? Is it IMDb? Is it just scanning reviews in general? Is it Rotten Tomatoes? Is it because there's an article that there's a horrible history to this film? So we try to find the worst that we can find, but again, we haven't seen them. So sometimes we do luck out and we do get a movie that's so bad it's good, something that's like this that you do want to share with friends. And while the movie is terrible at so many points, it is lots of fun to watch and laugh at. It's goofy and it's stupid. I think it also might be easy for us to choose this week compared to last week when we did Senorita Justice.
Oh, absolutely. It's night and day. And I think you'll even hear it in our voices how much more excited we are to talk about this movie.
Look at the last episode. We come in at just under or around 45 minutes. And this one's going to be, about 20 minutes over that just because we're enjoying talking about the movie that much.
Okay. This people take if you have a free 90 minutes, or if you want something to turn on while you're going to sleep, this is fun. Yeah.
It's on Netflix. The majority of people have Netflix, so it's easy to sit down and watch. There's plenty of times that people go, "Oh, what should we watch on Netflix?" Here you go. Here's an option right here. It's 90 minutes. When this movie's over, whoever you're watching it with, you let them choose the next thing. Not bad. For next week, we're going to do it. I had one or two movies I thought that I wanted to try to do, but I feel bad, and I think that we should do Heartbeeps, and that's just because I have a plan for March that I want to do. March being the third month of the year, and third entries of movies usually being absolutely terrible. I thought that we would do a sequels month, and we could find the third entry of certain film series. Like the one that comes to the top of my mind is Iron Eagle 3, which is like one of the most notorious bad sequels of all time. But I just thought it would be fun. Most people try to
sounds
do
really
like
fun.
number 2. So we'll fit in Heartbeeps next week, knowing that in March we're not really going to do that. And I'm trying to work on a possibility of getting us guests in that month.
That would be awesome. Yeah,
hopefully that works out.
Adrian, I'm holding this to you next week. Heartbeeps. We're doing it. I'm not going to talk me out of it this time. You always talk me like WWE movie. It'll be really fun. No.
Hey, I gave you the option this time. Remember? I did give you the option. It was going to be either the WWE Countdown movie or Lorenzo Lamas Snake Eater.
No,
so that's all I got to say.
Next week, the options are Heartbeeps
or Heartbeeps. Yes. All right, Scott, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at ScottDaly85. That's DALY. You can also find me on DailyPlanetFilms.com, where I do reviews, essays, a bunch of stuff on movies and TV, and that's where all of our other podcast episodes for the Daily Planet podcast and Kryptonian Collection will be found. You can subscribe to that on Twitter as well at Daily Planet Films.
All right. And you can find me on Twitter at Adrian Torres. At the same time, I'm constantly writing different reviews and articles at boomhowdy.com as well as downrightcreepy.com. If you go on to downrightcreepy.com, you're going to see that there's a whole bunch of reviews that have hit in the last week, all from Panic Fest. Go see them. Like, just read them. There's so many different reviews on there that you guys are going to love reading about. That's all I can say. Definitely check it out. At the same time, I think when we're doing episodes in March, we're going to try to make sure that they're all happening at once. I'm going to be gone for a weekend because I am actually going to be at South by Southwest as press for.
Here he goes. He's going to brag again about going to South by Southwest.
I want to have something nice that I can be. Not all of us just got married and continually can.
No, I'm very excited.
I just got married. I went on a mini moon because we're going on our honeymoon later this year.
Hey, I'm not the one. I wasn't bragging about that. You're talking about guys, I'm going to South by Southwest. I'm going to be pressed. I get to go to everything I want to.
Well, no, I still have to stand in like the giant lines.
Well, yeah, South by Southwest is kind of a mess. But no, I'm very excited for you. That's going to be awesome. You'll have to let me know how that goes. Because I've wanted to go to South by Southwest, but everything I've read as a just consumer of without a press pass, it's a disaster. So,
but not only does it sound like a disaster, but then like the price itself. That's what made me. I was like, so I can stay for $1,100?
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I'll go to that.
Yeah,
I got no problem with that. So good things happening, I guess.
Absolutely.
On behalf of Scott and I, we just want to say thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.